Hi, I'm Lynette, aka London Makeup Artistry, and welcome to my channel. Today I am bringing you the Battle of the Beauty Sponges. If you like these types of videos, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe because I do makeup tutorials, reviews, haul swatches here on my channel every Saturday, and you should go ahead and hit that little notification bell so you don't miss any videos. I have a couple of videos coming up that I'm excited about that I hope that you like. I have an eyeshadow tutorial using the Inglot eyeshadows I picked up recently. It was my first time purchasing Inglot shadows, my first time using them, and spoiler alert, very nice. So I don't want you to miss that. And my most exciting video that I'm looking forward to bringing you is my shopping strategy for IMATS New York 2018. IMATS will be here next month, woo, in a few short weeks, and I did film a video sharing with you my shopping strategy, and yes, I do have one for shopping at IMATS this year, and I don't want you to miss that. Battle of the Beauty Sponges. I am going to be comparing a number of beauty sponges with the original Beauty Blender. Now, the Beauty Blender was launched some years ago. I don't even remember what life was like before the Beauty Blender, but it was released some years ago, and its original color is pink, and since then they have them in a host of different colors, but it's the same sponge. I remember when I first started wearing foundation, I used to use a foundation brush, and then I moved on to using my hands, and then once this baby launched, there was no going back after I tried it. I find that it gives me, it's just a matter of preference. This is all going to be a matter of preference. But I find that the Beauty Blender gives me the most natural finish with my liquid and cream foundations and products, and so that's why I've gone back to it time and time again. I'm going to be showing you in this video, in my opinion, how these others stack up to the champ and see if perhaps one of these contenders can take the title. Okay, let's get started. So this is the Beauty Blender. We are all familiar with it now. At this point, it is shaped like an egg with a point at the top, and it's round all the way around, round bottom. And you use it damp, you submerge it under water, and then you squeeze out all of the excess water. Now, all of the ones I show you today, except for one that I use today, are all dry. So this one is dry, and they all primarily work in the same way. I think some of them say that you can use it dry, but I don't use any of my sponges dry. I always use them damp. The Beauty Blender says to use it damp, and that's what I do. And once you submerge them all in water and you wring them out, they will expand when wet. I really like the shape. They really, like, for the first try with this sponge, they really knocked it out of the park when it came to the shape. This point here is great for getting in the inner corner here and blending out product under the eye. I use the round, I call it the butt. I use the butt of it to blend out my foundations by bouncing it all over the face. You can use the sides of it if you want to blend out blush or concealers or highlighters. I find that if I go a little too hard with my contour or my highlight or my blush, the damp sponge really helps to bring it down and blend it out and make it look more natural. Now, one of the downsides to the Beauty Blender is the price. It's $20. Which I think is a lot for a sponge. I mean, as much as I love it, and I do, $20 is a lot. And so that's why you're going to see all these contenders, because I'm always looking for a cheaper alternative. And because you use it wet, it will soak up some of your product. So you may find yourself having to use more product because some of it will get soaked up into the sponge. Another thing about it is it's a sponge, so it does have the tendency to tear, and you'll see, perhaps you can see, I do have some tears in this one. Even when I have a little tiny bit of a nail, it's not unusual. It's not unusual for me to punch my nail into it and rip it and tear it. And over time, that will happen with the repeated washing of it. It does wash well. I wash it every 2 to 3 uses, and I get months and months of use out of it before I have to throw it away. So this has been the champ for many, many years. Beauty Blender also then came out with the Beauty Blender Pro. And this is filthy because I haven't washed it. And it's the Beauty Blender in black. And I thought, just like the other colors that they've released, that it's the same sponge, only a different color, and that they made it black and called it Pro because it hides maybe the product, the dirt in here a little better than, let's say, something this color. After using it, trying it, and using it for the first time, I immediately noticed that there is a difference in the consistency of this sponge. Still soft. They're both soft. They're both squishy. They both blow up to a nice size when they are dampened. But this one I find to be a little firmer, a little more dense than the original. And I find that I prefer a denser sponge. I feel like it's a little more hardy, although this one rips and tears also. Same as this one rips and tears too. I find that I prefer the Pro. Just a matter of preference. They both do the same thing and they're both great sponges. Now on to the contenders. I have a bunch of contenders here that I'm going to go through with you. I'm looking for my cheat sheet with the prices on it. So here we go. So after the Beauty Blender was launched and it took the beauty world by storm, then everybody else, of course, wanted to hop on the bandwagon, and they started creating and releasing their own beauty sponges. Some have been direct knockoffs of the Beauty Blenders, and then others have put their own spin on the makeup sponge. And the first one that I remember doing that is the Real Techniques Miracle Complexion Sponge. It is a similar shape as the Beauty Blender. You'll see it does have this point on the one end, but where it differs is on the other end. Instead of having a round butt, it has a flat side. The Real Techniques sponge is going to cost you about $6, which is a great price. I actually found that I really like this flat edge. I felt like it was an improvement on the Beauty Blender because this flat edge works beautifully under your eye. You can use the flat edge for applying and blending out your foundations, or you can still use the point on this side under your eye if you like. You can use it all the same way as the Beauty Blender. My problem with this sponge and why it never overtook the Beauty Blender, in my opinion, for me, is because I have found this sponge to be hard to clean. Even after the first washing, I found that I really wasn't able to get all of the product out, not even most of the product out. And that really bothered me. And to the point where, even though this is a $6 sponge and it works just as well as the Beauty Blender, it really does. The fact that I couldn't wash it to my satisfaction, I just never reached for it. It does soak up more product. I do feel like this sponge soaks up more product than the Beauty Blender. It holds more water. I might end up using a little bit more product as opposed to the Beauty Blender. I haven't bought any more of these sponges, and I probably won't. The next sponge that I tried, also from the drugstore, is the L'Oreal Paris Infallible Beauty Blender. And this one is going to run you about $8. So immediately, you can see that this sponge also is different from the Beauty Blender. L'Oreal went a different way in their shape of this sponge. I like the color. And that's about all that I like about this sponge. I used it. I've only used it once, to be honest with you. And after using it one time, I knew that I was not going to use it again. I did not like this sponge. And I've seen other people here on YouTube that love it. And again, it's just a matter of preference. But I don't like this sponge. Starting with, it feels more squishy now to me than it did the first time I used it. I remember the first time I used it and it felt really just too dense and too hard, not pliable enough. And this shape, I really don't like. I like that the butt, as you can see, the butt isn't exactly round like the Beauty Blender. It's more flat, which I like. And I like this little part here to hold it, to bounce on the face and blend out your product. But this pointed side up here with this like hourglass shape is just, in my opinion, it's just too fat. I find that it's not easy to get under the eye in the way that I want, especially in the inner corner when I'm blending out foundations and concealers. I don't like this sponge, just it's not my preference. So yeah, I used it once, never used it again, and won't be repurchasing it again. Our next contender is the NYX Flawless Finish Blending Sponge. And this is dirty. No judgment, okay? This is what it looks like. And this sponge is going to cost you $8. And as you can see, it's similar to the Real Technique sponge. It's got that round Beauty Blender shape, but it's got a flat edge. Not as wide as the Real Techniques, and you get more of a pointed side. The side that's not flat is a little more pointed, and the butt is a little more flat. Since releasing this sponge, NYX has quite a few. I think they have maybe two or three other sponges. They have one that has a double side flat edge, and so, but this is the first one I ever tried from them, and I really like this sponge. This sponge gives my Beauty Blender a run for its money. And I'll tell you why. It is a firmer sponge, which you know now I like. It's black, just like the Beauty Blender Pro. It's much denser than the Beauty Blender. And I don't know why, I just like a denser sponge. But it's still soft. As you can see, I can squish it even when dry. I like that flat edge. And this one is a little smaller and thinner, not as wide as the Real Techniques. And so you have a little sharper point on that other side. And because it's smaller, I feel like it just fits perfectly under my eye and in my inner corner. And I like that the butt is a little flat, more flat than round, and I use that to bounce. And then when I want to use powder to set my under eye concealer, I use that pointed side and I go right under the eye with it. It washes out very well. Now, the things that I don't like about this sponge is that it's a tad too dense, I think. It may be a tad too dense. And also, it's a little smaller. I like a bigger butt. I like big butts, and I don't know why. And I do know why I like a bigger butt, because you cover more surface area in a shorter period of time. This one, I feel like I'm blending out a lot longer, and because it's kind of stiff, I'm blending it out a lot longer, and my wrist starts to get a little tired after a while. So that's the downfall to this sponge. But if it was just a little less dense and the butt was a wee bit bigger, this would have totally knocked out my Beauty Blender. But as it stands, it's not a knockout. Our next contender is the Fenty Beauty Precision Makeup Sponge, and this little baby is going to cost you $16. So it is, of all the ones I'm going to show you today, it is the most expensive contender. Still cheaper than the Beauty Blender, but not by much, and certainly not as much as the others. And this is what she looks like. I do like the color. I don't know why. It shows the foundation really badly, but I like the color. So as you can see, again, you know, that similar egg shape with the round bottom, the round side. This one too has a flat edge. And then instead of coming to a point, I don't know if you can see that, but at the top here, instead of a point, we have this like half moon or half circle right at the top. Now that little half circle took some getting used to. But let's start with the feel and the size of this sponge. This sponge is really soft and really squishy. It's the squishiest of all the sponges I'm going to show you today. Some people like a really, really squishy sponge. I do not. It's just a little too squishy. I need a little more firm. It's very nice and soft though, but I need a little more firmness. I feel like there's like no structure with this sponge, and it's just, I don't know. I don't feel like I have a lot of control with this sponge because it's so soft and it's so squishy. Also the size. It does expand when it gets wet, but not that much, not big enough for my taste. And you already know I like a big butt, and this butt just ain't big enough. So for me, it's too small, and it did take some getting used to this little half moon here. But after a while, you know, because it's different from all the sponges that I've showed you thus far. After a while, I kind of got the hang of it, and it does fit nicely under the eye and in the inner corner. And you can use this side for blending out, or you can use the flat side. I use the flat side for under the eye. It's a nice sponge, but too small for me, too squishy for me, and I prefer the pointed end rather than this half moon end. So this is a no for me. And our next contender is from e.l.f., and it is the Total Face Sponge, and this is what it looks like. This sponge, I think I paid about $5 for this sponge, and that shape that we're all used to at this point. I love the color. You've got that point there, and then that flat edge, which is really wide and really big. You wet this and it does blow up. It's a big sponge to begin with. It's a big sponge dry, and then when you wet it, it's even bigger. So no problems with the size of this sponge. And I looked online for the sponge, and I can't find it on their websites, and it didn't really have great reviews, I'm gonna be honest. But because I knew I was gonna do this video and I saw it, I said, oh, let me try it and compare it as well. I like the price. I like the feel of it. It is very smooth, but it's got enough squish. It's got the right amount of firmness for me. But my only problem with this, I like the edge. It's, you know, it's big, not too pointy, more rounded, and it's easy to wash. This I actually did use. I only used it once, but I actually did use this sponge, and you can see it looks brand new. Like there's barely any product. I can't really see any product in it. It washes so well. My only problem with this sponge is that it retains a lot of water, and you do use more product because there's so much water in it. It shears out your product so much that you have to use more product. I think I used more product using this sponge than I did using any of the other sponges. I don't mind spending a few more dollars for something that I really like, that really works for me, and that's not going to have me using up a lot of my expensive product. So this is a no for me. Okay, we're coming to the end, you guys. I only have 2 left. The next one is this sponge by Juno & Co. And it is the Juno Microfiber Fusion Sponge. And this is what it looks like. It's got this blue color. And it's shaped much like the Fenty sponge, with the round bottom and side with this long flat edge. And then it too has that half moon at the top. This sponge is gonna cost you $4. It's the most affordable sponge that we've seen yet, and it is, I believe, the first and only microfiber sponge on the market. This one has got a different texture from all of the sponges we've seen today. It looks kind of furry, actually, sort of hairy, furry. Feels sort of like a velveteen type texture. The claim to fame for this microfiber sponge is that Juno claims that you will use 50% less product with this sponge. So microfiber sponge is just like your dish towel, and a microfiber towel is what you use to dry your dishes, for example. If you've used one to dry your dishes, you'll find that when you dry your wet dishes, the towel doesn't get saturated with water immediately. It soaks up the water but still stays fairly dry, which allows you to dry your dish. So that is the same concept behind this sponge. And I found that when I use this sponge, not only did I use less product, I got fuller coverage because of the fact that it wasn't shearing out my foundation because of it was so damp with water. This kind of trapped the water inside, and I was able to use more of my product, which was nice. And that's probably the only thing I liked about this sponge besides the price. Even after you've submerged it in water and you've wrung it out, after maybe bouncing it on my face a few times, it feels like you're using a dry sponge. And that just didn't work for me because it is a dense sponge. It's the densest sponge that I've shown you today, and it makes it less pliable. It's hard to manipulate it. So like trying to get here under my eye with it, forget about the inner corner. It was just way too difficult. This just did not work for me at all. I don't want to tell you how to spend your money, but if I could suggest, use that $4 and buy yourself a nice cup of coffee because I wouldn't even spend $4 on this one. This was a no-go. I used it once and I will never use it again, nor will I ever purchase it again. And last but not least for our contenders is the EcoTools Total Perfecting Blender. And this is filthy, as you can see. I do have a clean one here that I haven't used yet. And this is the color that I've been seeing in the stores, this green color. This one I bought in Target over the holidays, Christmas time. And it's like this gray color. So I don't know why this one is gray and the rest of them are green. This sponge is going to cost you $5. And this one is the one that's wet because I used it today. So you see how big this puppy is. So this is what it looks like. I don't know if you can see with my lights. That's the size of it dry. And this is the size of it wet. And I said I like big butts. This got a big old butt. So again, it is one of those this one has a double flat edge, right? So it's got that round big old butt, and then it's got a double flat edge. One edge is almost the length of the sponge, and then the other edge is a much shorter edge, and they're both flat. And then in the middle, instead of a point or a half moon, you actually have this flat, narrow, rectangular edge at the top. It gets really big, maybe a little too big. I know I've been talking about I like big butts, but this butt might be just a tad too big. It's super soft, super like squishy, but it's got some firmness to it, but it's not a firm sponge. It's a really soft sponge. Not as squishy as the Fenty one that felt like it had no backbone whatsoever. This one is has a nice amount of squish to it. And so I like to use, that big old butt for blending out foundations, and then I'll use one side for my concealer, and then the other side, if I use powder to set the concealer, I'll use the little short side for the powder to set the concealer. And then what I've found with this flat narrow edge here, this is perfect for cleaning up the contour right under here. It gives you a perfectly straight line, and I found that I've been doing that a lot lately, and it is easy to wash. You can see it's beat up. I know it looked like a gerbil or a hamster chewed on it, but it is beat up, but it's beat up because I've been using this sponge. I've been reaching for this sponge. I really like this sponge. Now, it did take a minute for me to get used to this flat, thin, narrow, flat edge at the top, but it fits nicely under the eye, right here in the inner corners where things got tricky. But now I just put it on the side, and I just go up and down like the side of my nose with it, and works perfectly fine. This sponge has really been giving my beauty blender a run for its money. And you see I got another one because I like this one so much I went and bought another one. Any drawbacks to this sponge? Aside from the fact that it might be a little too big. No, that would be my only drawback with this sponge. So, battle of the beauty sponges. Who's the winner? Do we have a winner? Is the beauty blender still champ, or has one of these contenders knocked it out of the box? Well, I would have to say that as of today, the champ has been beaten. Yes, I can't believe I've said it. All these sponges that I've bought and tried and used over the years have come close to knocking the beauty blender off of its perch, but none have actually overthrown it until now. The new champ is the EcoTools sponge. I really like it. The price, $5, and it does everything I needed to do, and that little extra flat edge there just really put it over the top. Okay guys, that's it. I'm sorry for the long ass video, but you know, I had information to give you. So there we go. If you like this video, please hit that like button and consider subscribing, because I do beauty related videos every Saturday here on my channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss the good stuff that's coming up. I hope to see you again next week. Until then, bye-bye.